Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Workforce Reimagined, the show where we explore how human talent and digital innovations are reshaping how we build, lead, and scale organizations. I'm your host, Nachiket Mehta. Today's episode is incredibly special to me, not just professionally, but personally. I'm honored to be joined by someone who has been a mentor, role model, and a leader I have looked up to for many years. Please welcome Naras and Chupari. Naras, thank you for joining.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nachi, for having me.
For Naras's introduction, Naras is the Chief Global Data and Analytics Officer at Universal Music Group. But his journey spans much more from a PhD in marketing, which led to the first job in advertising, followed by stints in market research at AC Nielsen and management consulting with McKinsey and Company. He made a shift to a senior executive at a large bank where he found his love for customer data and related technologies. He then shifted to an entrepreneur track, founding and scaling Quero, a pioneer data driven marketing technology firm, to navigating complex transformations in global enterprise. In this episode, we talk about building high impact teams across decades of technology changes, how the role of data and AI is evolving in the enterprises, and what the next generation of leaders must learn to thrive in a human plus digital world. This one is full of timeless leadership, wisdom, and a powerful stories too. Let's dive in. So, Naras, your career journey has spanned academia, entrepreneurship, and now enterprise leadership. What's been the most common thread connecting all of it?
So, Nachi, first, thank you very much for that nice introduction. And so, when I think about what has been a long and very fulfilling career, I would say the one common thread in my case has been innovation. I've always done new things. I've been on the leading edge. I've been trying to be careful about not being on the cutting edge too much, or the bleeding edge, as it's sometimes called. But trying and doing new things, sometimes in unfamiliar industries, like in music right now. But I started my career with new product development and management consulting in the early years, leading change and transformation in later years, starting with my time at McKinsey. But this thread has always been there, trying to do something new, either old things in new places or
Mhm.
new things in old places, and
Yeah.
that's been actually a very fascinating journey.
Looking back, what leadership principles stayed constant and what had to evolve as the world changed?
What's remained constant? I think the constant is you hired good people. And I'll come back to a definition of good, but you hire good people, you give them a sense of mission, and you give them direction. The mission is maybe too high level, so you need to give them direction.
Yeah.
You tell them what to do. And then at that point, you give them the right tools to do what they need to do. And then you leave them alone. You trust them. You need to still verify. You trust but verify, but you need to trust them to do their jobs. And also the second thing is, especially if you hire good people, especially better people than yourself, then listen to their ideas and be sensitive to their needs. Building a sense of team through a sense of purpose is very important. I think it's not individuals alone. You need good individuals, but a team needs to be more than the sum of the parts and the sum of the people. And then you need to have fun. Wherever I've been, I've tried to make sure that people are having fun, both in and outside the job, and that's very important. I think what has evolved, if I think about what has changed, I would say there is being much more rigorous on hiring the right people. And when I say right, I talked about good people before, right people now. There are three dimensions of what constitutes good, in my opinion. One is, of course, core competence. They need to be good at whatever it is you're hiring them
Mhm.
for. They need to be knowledgeable, skilled, and all that kind of stuff. The second thing is they need to be motivated. They need to be hardworking. They need to be diligent. Hardworking doesn't mean putting the hours, but they need to be smart. They need to be diligent, care about what they're doing, about producing good work. And the third thing is, frankly, and maybe the most important thing, is attitude. The cultural fit is very
Yeah.
important. And if you have one person who's brilliant and really good, and we've all had this, but who doesn't really fit and is sort of a one man or a one woman show, it really takes away from the chemistry. It slows everybody else down. So
Mm.
yeah, so it's you need somebody that's performing on on all three dimensions. And
Yeah.
if when you get that right, that can be magic.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have built and scaled teams through various eras, right? My question is like, how did the building a data team, like, particularly mean uh, 10, 15 years ago versus today? How is it different?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Looking back, I'm not even sure that there were data engineers back 20, 25 years ago when I started Quero. And at least we didn't call them that back then. Okay. They were the IT guys.
Yeah.
And there were the data architects, but then there were tech people who
Yeah.
implemented the data products. The specialization in different areas of data has come a long way. And now, of course, is again significantly being changed by AI. The one thing that has not changed is for data engineers or the technical people to truly understand what the business requires. And this is
Absolutely.
not just about collecting business requirements. It's about
Yeah.
truly understanding what the business wants, who is buying, who is
Mm.
using, what are the processes they are going through. And we used to find that pairing business analysts with the technical people who used to be a very powerful combination and frankly was
Mm.
an essential combination. And that remains true today. I think, in fact, particularly with AI, so often the impact you're having is on processes, not so much on
Yeah.
the technology. So it's become even more important to understand the process of the business.
Yeah. Yeah. That's gold. And so I think, what leadership lessons do you wish more startup CEOs understood when building their technical teams, not data teams, technical teams?
Great question. And I'll go back to the answer I just gave a few minutes ago, which is that one good hire is worth many average ones. I'm not going to put a number on it, but many,
Yeah.
many average ones. And one bad hire can slow down and demotivate an entire team. So
True.
pay close attention to hiring. It's too often easy to just do convenient hires. Who's available? Who do you know? Who do you can you
Hmm.
put on board? You really have to, and people that are great in one context are not necessarily great in another context. So
Yeah.
you need to make sure that they are really fit for what you're fit for purpose, for your purpose. And and the tech and the product are just entry points. So
Mm.
founders, it really is critical for them to understand the market, the buyer, the user, and the context in which they operate, and make sure that gets through to the technical team. That the team
Yeah.
understands those things as well. And if the CEO doesn't understand it, the team isn't going to understand it.
Right. Yeah, that's very important. Just the culture and that connection across
Yeah,
many teams matters a lot. Yeah.
exactly.
So now, getting into your experience in the enterprise data transformation at scale, right? You are now a global data and analytics officer at Universal Music Group. How do you define and lead data transformation across a creative global business?
Wow. Despite the fancy title, it's not easy, right? I mean, particularly in creative environment. And it's interesting, I started my career in advertising, which is a very creative industry. And then I'm sort of in the last stages of my career and I'm wrapping it
Yeah.
up with music, which is also very creative. And I would say the common challenge in creative industries is data literacy or a lack of
Mm.
data literacy. So education becomes very important
Mm.
and educating people, making them aware, getting them motivated to learn.
Mm.
It's a lot harder than building and rolling out data products, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because you have to change behavior, you have to persuade people, and so that's one thing that's
Yeah.
challenging. And I think doing it well is leadership, is what it is.
Right.
And then governance, data governance is very important, especially in the coming age of AI. You need to know what data you have, where it is, how good it is, you know, taxonomy, classification, all that stuff.
yeah,
It kind of sounds boring. It isn't, but it sounds boring,
yeah,
and it's very hard to get funding for it because it's not sexy, and it doesn't always move the needle on the top line, but it's very foundational to the things that do move the needle.
yeah,
And so that is very important. And that's where leadership comes in. You need to be able to convince the
true.
people that hold the purse strings that this is worth spending money on, even though they don't see tangible short term results,
Yeah,
because this is going to pay off in the long term. And product and process disciplines are very difficult to establish in creative industries because they tend to be not process driven.
mm,
And so bringing that in, it can be a very alien thing in these kinds of environments. But I think our team has overcome many of these challenges very effectively over the past few years. And we've really established some great capabilities that are moving the needle and established some great foundation for
yeah.
building the future.
Oh, that's excellent. And in fact, like that remains consistent, right? The governance, taxonomy that you mentioned, even right now, ontology and knowledge graph is picking huge traction in the world of
Yes,
AI, right? So it's just that same old basic first principles, just renamed into different brands.
exactly.
That's what matters. Yeah,
That's exactly right. The language sometimes changes, the reality doesn't to some extent.
yeah.
At least the underlying reality doesn't. That's right.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. And so, are you seeing shifts in how business teams and data teams collaborate? And if so, like, how do you bridge that gap?
No, that's another interesting question. I connect with a lot of my peers in the industry. I know a lot of the chief CDAOs out there in many companies, and there's a pattern that I've noticed. That, in fact, this is an argument that, or a discussion, I guess, that many of us have, which is what is the right structurally? Where does the CDAO belong? Where does the CDO belong? Where does the CDAO belong? And very often, data will be in the IT area, in the reporting to the CIO, and the analytics people will be closer to the business. When you have a CDAO that combines both functions, where does it belong? Is it business? Is it IT? And that shapes the thing. So what I've seen is the CDAOs or the CDOs who are within the CIO organization tend to have good relationships with IT because they are peers and they tend to have a better sense of who does what. I think in areas where the data and analytics reports into the business relationships tend to be very strong because they are
So,
very sitting close to business, they understand it, all that. But working with IT, especially where are the dividing lines between what IT does and controls, what does data do and control, because the two are very intertwined but different.
yeah,
That can be a bit of a challenge in those circumstances.
yeah. Wow. So I think it's so the business and tech needs that bridging, and it's important.
And
I want
yes,
to, yeah,
and by the way, I just not to interrupt, but business and tech need bridging, as you said. And data can be a great bridge because people who are good data teams need to have a keen understanding of the business as well as a keen understanding of technology and how to leverage it. So we are a natural bridge between these two areas if the bridge is well built
yeah.
and can cross a lot of
That's true.
rivers.
So as a leader, how do you distinguish between tech that truly augments talent and tech that simply reduces the headcount?
Honestly, I'm not sure that I can, at least in advance. You know, it's hard to know sometimes. It usually takes a bit of trial and error with any new tech to truly understand where the value lies. Because sometimes the tech will surprise you, sometimes your people will surprise you, right?
Yeah,
And I'm not even sure that it's a dichotomy between talent augmentation and cost reduction. Because there's a lot of other things, potential benefits from tech, speed to market, quality enhancement, greater consistency, like meeting customer expectations, for instance.
mm,
So sometimes tech just helps people move from one part of the value chain or one part of the process to another part. Because you automate one part of the process, then you go put your focus on
yeah,
something else where you can make a difference. So I I don't. think of it as being one versus the other. It's kind of an amalgamation, if you will.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And so in that case, to continue that thought, like what are your thoughts on talent readiness for Gen AI, from C-suites to early career professionals?
That's a tough one. As I said earlier, it may feel like it's been around a long time, but Gen AI is still relatively new. It's
Yeah.
been less than 3 years since the big chat GPT thing came out. And despite all the hype and funding and the activity and buzz surrounding it, in fact, we may be very close to the hype of the top of the hype cycle here, right?
Mm.
Although I'm not sure if we are approaching the top or we have already seen the top and we are on the other
Nobody
side of
knows.
the mountain yet. But at some point, the buzz and the disappointments will come.
Mm.
And I think that will be the time to judge who is truly ready for this AI age, who has the staying power, who's
Mm.
going to hang in there when the bad times come, and who's
Yeah.
going to get washed away by the tide, right? So, that being said, I do think early career professionals will ride this wave much more effectively in the medium to long term than the C suite folks. Although in the short term, I think the early career people are hurting more
Mm.
because they're the obvious victims of what's happening. But I
Yeah.
think in the long term, it's going to be the reverse.
Yeah. I just read an article yesterday that there is 16% drop in the new graduates to find the
Yeah,
job just
yeah.
because of this challenge. Uh, so
I
yeah,
saw that as well. I saw that as well. I don't think it's a long term trend. At least that's my feeling.
yeah, yeah, makes sense. Okay, so I want to take our conversation into more like the mentorship, right? You are leaving a big legacy. You have been a pioneer in many transformations. You've been author of many things along the way. So I want to just like get into looking back to look forward kind of theme, right? So you have mentored many individuals, including myself. What's your approach to mentorship and leadership development?
Listening closely and absorbing what the other person is saying. And if you can listen closely, you can also see beyond the words to what underlying, what is driving, the anxiety, the questioning, whatever it is, and trying to truly understand their motivations. What are they really trying to achieve? Because the question may be at a superficial level, but the thing that's driving it is much deeper. And probing there, getting in there, is very important. Until I understand and empathize with that person and what they are trying to achieve, it's very hard really to guide them appropriately and properly.
So, what would you tell young CXOs or Chief Data Analytics Officers stepping into their first executive role today?
Well, again, I'll go back to something I kind of alluded to earlier in this conversation, which I would tell them or tell him or her, your job is to understand who you are serving, who is your client. There's always a client, right? And it could be your boss, it could be an internal stakeholder, it could be your peers,
Yeah.
and very often it is your team. And so, therefore, you need to understand who you're serving, who your audience is, who your stakeholders are, and how can you make them successful and make them look good. If they look good, if they do well, you will look good.
So, on the topic of book, I want to ask like what books that you have always returned to for inspiration.
I read a lot, so this was hard for me to think about. But when you phrase it that way about inspiration, there are two books that come to mind from a long while ago. I read these very early on in my career, and they were somewhat life changing, definitely life impacting. One was a book called The Road Less Traveled
Mm.
by Scott Peck.
Okay.
And the second one is a book actually that the CEO of the bank where I worked sent to all the top management. And I read it, and it spoke to me. It was called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And the subtitle is It's All Small Stuff. So basically, what it says is don't sweat anything.
That's
And
right.
I've taken that to heart. I've rarely sweated it, even when things were really tough, and
Yeah,
it's made life a lot easier. So those are two books I would mention and highly recommend, and they're both fairly readable. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Naras. I hope this was helpful for everyone, and I had a great time. Thank you so much again. Appreciate
thank
it.
you, Nachi. My pleasure.